Are you starving? The millionaire asked, following his cleaner home. Adriana Vega never imagined that being followed by her boss would change her entire life. It was 6:30 p.m. when Adriana stepped out of the service entrance of the Marquis building in the heart of Manhattan, New York. She had been cleaning Ethan Hayes' penthouse for nearly 2 years, always on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Ethan was discreet, well-mannered, and rarely home when she worked. At 32, he'd inherited a chain of luxury boutique hotels and lived between meetings and business trips to cities like London and Tokyo. That evening, Adriana finished earlier. She put away the cleaning supplies, hung the apron in the utility closet, and picked up her worn canvas tote bag. Passing through the living room, she saw Ethan sitting on the sofa, scrolling on his phone. "I'm leaving now, Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice low and respectful as always. Ethan looked up and nodded. "See you Thursday, Adriana. Thanks for your work." She nodded and left. What Adriana didn't notice was Ethan getting up shortly after, grabbing his car keys and taking the main elevator downstairs. It wasn't the first time he'd noticed something odd about her. In recent months, Adriana was thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, and her clothes seemed looser. She never complained, never missed a day. But Ethan had a growing feeling that something was wrong. Adriana walked to the bus stop on Fifth Avenue. The evening was crisp, with that typical orange glow of a New York autumn. She boarded the crowded M15 bus, holding tightly to the rail as it headed toward the Washington Heights neighborhood, where she lived with her daughter. Ethan followed the bus from a distance in his black BMW sedan. He couldn't explain why. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe concern, but something inside him told him he needed to understand. Adriana got off on W 178th Street, a narrow street with older brownstones and peeling paint on the fire escapes. She walked 2 blocks to a small apartment building with a green door, barred windows, and cracked pavement. Ethan parked across the street and watched. Adriana went inside. Minutes later, she came out again, now with a girl about 6 years old beside her. The little girl was wearing a school uniform and held her mother's hand. The two walked to a small bodega on the corner. Ethan got out of the car and followed discreetly. Inside the bodega, Adriana picked up just 3 items: a small bag of rice, a can of black beans, and a carton of milk. She went to the counter, opened her wallet, and carefully counted the change. She was a few dollars short. She put the milk back. "Just these two, please," she told the cashier with a forced smile. The little girl, Renata, tugged on her mother's skirt. "Mommy, what about the milk?" "We'll get it tomorrow, sweetie. Today it's just going to be rice and beans, okay?" The little girl looked down but didn't push it. Ethan felt a knot in his chest. He was standing outside, looking through the glass window. When Adriana came out with the bag and her daughter, he took a few steps, blocking their path. Adriana's eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Hayes, what are you doing here?" Ethan looked at her, then at the girl, and then at the small bag in Adriana's hands. He took a deep breath before asking, his voice firm but without judgment. "Adriana, are you starving?" The silence that followed was heavy. Adriana looked down, clutching her daughter's hand. And for the first time in 2 years, Ethan realized he knew nothing about the life of the woman who cleaned his home. Adriana didn't answer immediately. She stood on the sidewalk with her eyes fixed on the ground, as if the weight of Ethan's question had stolen all the air from her lungs. Renata looked up at her mother with that confused expression only children have when they sense something is wrong but don't understand what. "Mr. Hayes, I don't understand why you followed me," Adriana finally said, her voice trembling. Ethan took a step back, realizing his presence might seem intrusive. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. It's just that for the last few months, I've noticed you're thinner, more tired, and now seeing you return the milk." He paused. "Adriana, do you need help?" Adriana pressed her lips together, fighting back tears. She didn't want to cry in front of her daughter, much less in front of her boss, but the truth was she was at her limit. "I'm fine, sir. I'm just going through a rough patch, but I'll push through, I always do." Ethan looked at Renata, who was tightly holding her mother's hand, and then at the bag with only 2 items. He knew a rough patch was a polite way of saying something much worse. "Come with me," he said firmly. "We're going back to the bodega." Adriana shook her head. "It's not necessary, Mr. Hayes. I didn't come here to ask for anything. I work, I earn my money." "I know. I know you work, and I know you're one of the most dedicated people I've ever met, but that doesn't mean you have to go through this alone. Ethan was already walking back toward the bodega. Let's go, please. Adriana hesitated, but Renata tugged her hand. Mommy, he wants to help. With a sigh, Adriana followed Ethan back into the store. Inside, Ethan grabbed a shopping cart and started filling it. Rice, beans, cooking oil, pasta, milk, eggs, chicken, vegetables, fruit. Adriana tried to stop him several times. Mr. Hayes, this is too much. I can't accept all this. You can and you will, he replied without turning around. And I'm not going to argue about it. When they got to the checkout, the bill was over $100. Ethan paid without a second thought. The cashier, a man with a gray mustache, looked at Adriana with a sympathetic smile, as if he knew this was more than just a simple purchase. Outside, Ethan carried the bags to his car. Adriana and Renata followed in silence. I'll drive you home, he said, opening the back door. Mr. Hayes, you don't have to. Ethan cut her off, looking her in the eyes. Stop saying it's not necessary. It is, and it's okay to need. Adriana felt the tears flow, unable to stop them. She got into the car with Renata, and Ethan drove to the green-doored building. When they arrived, Ethan helped carry the bags inside. The apartment was small but clean and tidy. There was only a living room with an old couch, a small wooden table, and an ancient TV. The kitchen was tiny, and Ethan noticed the fridge was nearly empty. After putting away the groceries, Ethan turned to Adriana. Now tell me, what's going on? Adriana wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and took a deep breath. She knew she couldn't hide it anymore. My husband, my ex-husband, left us 8 months ago. He just took off without a word, stopped paying child support, stopped calling, and I was left alone with Renata. She looked at her daughter, who was sitting on the couch hugging a worn doll. I work in 3 homes, Mr. Hayes, yours, Mrs. Davidson's, and Mr. Romero's. But Mrs. Davidson went on a 2-month cruise and didn't pay me before she left. And Mr. Romero is 3 weeks behind on his payment. Ethan felt his anger rise. And you didn't tell me? How could I tell you, sir? You always pay me on time. Well, I didn't want you to think I was asking for more. I have my pride. Pride doesn't feed the stomach, Adriana. Ethan crossed his arms. You're telling me you work in 3 homes, raise a child alone, and barely have enough to eat? Adriana looked down. I always manage. Renata has never gone to bed hungry. Ask her. And you, how many times have you gone to bed without eating so she wouldn't starve? Adriana didn't answer. The reply was in her silence. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to control his emotion. He took out his wallet, pulled out $200 in cash, and handed it to Adriana. This is an advance, and from now on, I'm increasing your pay. It's not a favor. It's what's fair. Adriana looked at the money, then at Ethan. Mr. Hayes, why are you doing this? Ethan hesitated. He could have given a simple answer, said it was the right thing to do, but the truth was deeper. Because my mother went through the same thing, he said softly. My father abandoned us when I was 7, and I remember seeing my mom crying in secret, pretending everything was okay. I remember being hungry and seeing her lie that she'd already eaten. So when I see you doing the same for Renata, he stopped, swallowing the lump in his throat. I can't pretend I didn't see. Adriana covered her face with her hands and began to truly cry. Renata ran to her and hugged her. Ethan stood there, feeling that this moment had changed something in him too. When Adriana calmed down, she looked at Ethan with gratitude in her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, from the bottom of my heart. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't have to repay me for anything. Just promise me one thing. What? That if you need help again, you'll tell me. No pride, no shame. Deal? Adriana nodded, smiling for the first time that night. Deal. Ethan left the green-doored building with a strange feeling in his chest. He had only gone there out of curiosity, but now he knew the decision had opened a door he didn't know if he could close, and somehow he didn't want to. In the following weeks, Adriana's life began to change in subtle but significant ways. Ethan kept his promise, increased her pay, and also started making small gestures that were simple for him but meant the world to Adriana. He started leaving food in the penthouse before traveling with a note. Don't let this go to waste. He sent messages asking if Renata needed school supplies. Once, when Adriana mentioned the girl had an earache, Ethan paid for the doctor's visit without her asking. Adriana, for her part, didn't know how to react. She wasn't used to selfless kindness. For years, she had learned to get by alone, to expect nothing from anyone, but Ethan was gradually breaking down that wall. One Thursday, while Adriana was cleaning the kitchen in Ethan's penthouse, he arrived early from work. She was mopping the floor, focused, when she heard the door open. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hayes," she said, quickly standing up. "Good afternoon, Adriana. Go on. I didn't come to get in the way." He went to the fridge, got a bottle of water, and sat at the living room table. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." Adriana stopped what she was doing and approached nervously. "Is something wrong?" "No, no, relax." Ethan smiled. "I was just thinking, Renata is 6, right?" "7. Her birthday was last month." "Oh, sorry, I didn't know." He paused. "And where does she go to school?" "The public elementary school in Washington Heights, PS 173. It's a good school, but—" Adriana hesitated. "But what?" "They're asking for supplies for the second semester, and there's a field trip next month to the American Museum of Natural History. I'm saving up, but—" She sighed. "I don't know if I'll manage." Ethan took out his phone and typed something. "How much is it?" "Mr. Hayes, you've already done so much." "Adriana, how much?" She looked down. "150 for the supplies and the trip." Ethan opened his banking app and made a transfer instantly. Adriana's phone vibrated. She looked at the screen and her eyes widened. "Mr. Hayes, this is too much." "It's what Renata needs, and I want her to go on that field trip. Kids need to be kids." Adriana felt her eyes well up with tears again. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to repay me. I just want you and Renata to be okay." Ethan took a sip of water. "Actually, I wanted to propose something else." Adriana looked at him curiously. "My mom is coming back from Florida at the end of the month. She's going to stay here for a few days. And I thought, would you and Renata like to come over for dinner on Saturday? My mom loves meeting new people, and I think you two would get along." Adriana was speechless. Dinner at her boss's house. It was weird, almost bizarre, but the way Ethan spoke, with sincerity and no hidden agenda, made her relax. "It would be an honor, Mr. Hayes, but—" "Are you sure? I'm just the cleaner." "You are not just anything, Adriana. You are an incredible woman, a super dedicated mom, and someone I admire very much." He stood up. "So, Saturday at 7 p.m.? Adriana smiled, still in shock. "It's a date." Saturday arrived and Adriana was nervous. She carefully combed Renata's hair, put her in the best dress she had, and wore a simple blouse and a denim skirt herself. It wasn't formal wear, but it was the best she had. When they arrived at Ethan's penthouse, he greeted them with a beaming smile. He was dressed casually in a short-sleeved shirt and jeans. "Welcome, come on in." In the living room, a woman in her mid-50s, with dark hair and a few gray streaks pulled back in a bun, was sitting on the sofa. She stood up as soon as she saw Adriana and Renata. "You must be Adriana," she said with a warm smile. "Ethan has told me so much about you. I'm Lucia." Adriana shook her hand. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. Lucia. This is my daughter, Renata." Lucia knelt in front of the girl. "You're so beautiful. Ethan said you're a really good student." Renata smiled shyly. "I try." "Come on, let's have dinner," Ethan said, leading them to the table already set with home-cooked food, roast chicken, rice, salad, and warm tortillas. During dinner, Lucia and Adriana talked about everything. Lucia shared stories of raising Ethan alone, the struggles she faced, and how she worked as a seamstress to pay for her son's education. Adriana felt a deep connection with every word. "I know what that's like," Adriana said, wiping away a tear. "Sometimes you feel like you can't go on, but you keep going because there's someone depending on you." Lucia took Adriana's hand. "And you will make it. You are strong, my dear. I see it in you." Ethan watched the two chatting and felt something stir inside him. He had never seen his mother so comfortable with anyone. And Adriana, for the first time since he'd known her, seemed relaxed, happy. After dinner, Renata and Ethan played cards while Lucia and Adriana washed the dishes together, laughing and sharing stories. When the evening ended, Adriana said goodbye with a full heart. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, and thank you, Mrs. Lucia. This was one of the most special nights of my life. Lucia hugged Adriana. You're welcome here anytime. And just call me Lucia. Ethan drove Adriana and Renata home in his car. On the way, Renata fell asleep in the back seat. Adriana looked out the window at the city lights and said softly, I'll never forget what you did for me. For us. Ethan smiled. I just did what was right, Adriana. And the truth is, you two gave me something I didn't know I was missing. What? Purpose. Adriana looked at him, not fully understanding, but sensing that something between them had changed. They were no longer just boss and employee. It was something deeper, something neither of them knew how to name yet. In the weeks following the dinner, Ethan and Adriana grew closer. It wasn't planned or forced, it happened naturally. He started asking about her day, how Renata was doing in school, and her future plans. Adriana, for her part, felt more comfortable with him. She laughed at his jokes and shared small details of her life that she used to keep to herself. But not everything was calm. One afternoon, while Adriana was cleaning the bathroom in the penthouse, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She hesitated but answered. Hello? Adriana, it's me, Robert. Adriana's heart stopped for a second. Robert, the ex-husband who abandoned her 8 months ago, without explanation, without leaving a dime for his daughter. His voice was the same, but the impact it had now was completely different. What do you want? She asked in a cold voice. I know I don't have the right to call you, but I need to see you. I need to talk to you and Renata. Talk? You disappeared, Robert. You abandoned us. And now you want to talk? I know. I messed up big time. I got into some serious trouble, Adriana. I owed money to the wrong people. I had to disappear because if I stayed, you two would have been hurt. And you think leaving was better? You think leaving your daughter without knowing if her dad was alive or dead was the solution? No, I know it wasn't, but I didn't know what to do. He looked at her with red eyes. I want to come back, Adriana. I want to try again. I want to be the dad Renata deserves. Adriana felt anger boiling inside her. You can't just show up and ask to come back, Robert. Life doesn't work that way. Renata and I survived without you, and it wasn't easy. I went hungry so she wouldn't. I worked until I couldn't stand it anymore. And you weren't here. I know, and I'm so sorry. He tried to take her hand, but Adriana pulled away. No, you can't just come back. If you want any chance of seeing Renata, you're going to have to prove that you've changed. And not for me, for her. Robert nodded, tears in his eyes. I will prove it, I swear. Adriana stood up. We'll see. She started to walk away but stopped and looked back. And Robert, if you disappear again, I will never forgive you, and neither will Renata. She walked toward where Ethan was sitting, and he immediately stood up. Everything okay? He asked. Yeah, let's go. In the car, Adriana was silent for a long time. Ethan didn't pressure her, he just drove, giving her the space she needed. When they arrived near her apartment, Adriana finally spoke. Thank you for coming with me. Always. She looked at him. Why are you doing this, Ethan? Why do you care so much? Ethan parked the car and turned to her. Because you deserve someone who cares, Adriana. You've been strong alone for too long, and I want to be here, if you let me. Adriana felt her heart racing. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to believe him, but another part was still afraid of being hurt again. I need time, she whispered. I know, and I'll give you all the time you need. Adriana got out of the car and went inside. But that night, for the first time in a long time, she fell asleep thinking that maybe, just maybe, life could surprise her in a good way. 2 months passed since the meeting with Robert. He genuinely tried to be present. He picked Renata up from school once a week, took her for ice cream, and called to see how she was doing. But Adriana noticed something was missing. Robert was trying, but he wasn't the dad Renata needed. He was just someone who showed up occasionally, without consistency, without structure. Renata, for her part, was confused. She liked seeing her dad, but she always came home asking when he was going to visit them for real, when they would be a family again. Adriana didn't know how to answer her. Ethan remained present. He took Renata to Central Park on Sundays, helped Adriana with her bills, and slowly, without forcing it, became a constant presence in their lives. Adriana began to realize that Ethan wasn't there out of pity or obligation. He was there because he wanted to be. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan invited Adriana and Renata on a trip to the Jersey Shore boardwalk. They rode the carousel, ate pizza, and listened to the distant sound of the ocean waves. Renata was happy, laughing and pointing at the seagulls flying near the water. "Look, Mommy! Look at all the birds!" Adriana smiled but was quiet. Ethan noticed. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly so Renata wouldn't hear. "I'm thinking that I never imagined life could be like this. So light, so happy." She looked at him. "I spent so much time just surviving that I forgot what it means to truly live." Ethan gently took her hand. "You deserve to live, Adriana, not just survive." Adriana felt her eyes well up, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Weeks later, Robert showed up at Adriana's apartment unannounced. He was drunk, banging on the door and shouting her name. "Adriana, open this door. I want to see my daughter." Adriana was inside with Renata clinging to her, terrified. She grabbed her phone and called Ethan without a second thought. "Ethan, he's here. He's drunk and won't leave. I'm on my way. Don't open the door." 15 minutes later, Ethan arrived. Robert was sitting on the steps with his head in his hands. When he saw Ethan, he stood up, swaying. "Who are you, her new boyfriend?" "It doesn't matter who I am," Ethan said firmly. "What matters is that you're scaring your daughter. You need to leave. This is my home, my family." "It's not anymore. You gave that up when you walked away." Ethan stepped forward. "And if you truly care about Renata, you'll leave now and come back when you're sober and ready to be the dad she deserves." Robert looked at the closed door, then at Ethan, and then lowered his head. He knew Ethan was right. Without another word, he stumbled away down the street. Ethan knocked on the door. "Adriana, it's me. He's gone." The door opened, and Adriana appeared with Renata still clinging to her. Ethan came in and closed the door. "It's all okay now," he said, embracing both of them. "He won't be back today." Renata sobbed into her mother's shoulder. "I don't like it when Daddy is like that. It's scary." Adriana stroked her daughter's hair. "I know, sweetie, I know." Ethan stayed with them all evening. He made them hot chocolate, put on a movie for Renata to watch until she fell asleep, and then sat down next to Adriana in the small living room. "Thank you," she said in a tired voice. "Again." "You don't have to thank me. I'll always be here when you need me." Adriana looked at him. "Why? Why are you doing all of this?" Ethan took a deep breath. He knew this moment would come. "Because I've fallen in love with you, Adriana, and with Renata too. You two became my family without me even realizing it." Adriana's eyes widened. "Ethan, I know it's not the best timing. I know you're dealing with a lot. But I needed to tell you because I don't want you to think I'm doing it out of pity or obligation. I'm here because I want it to be. Because you both make me happy." Tears streamed down Adriana's face. "I'm scared, Ethan. I'm scared to believe in this and get hurt again." "I know, but I'm not Robert. I won't leave you, I promise." Adriana looked into his eyes and saw sincerity. She saw the same dedication he showed every day in small gestures, kind words, and constant presence. And for the first time, she let the fear give way to hope. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "And that scares me." Ethan smiled and took her hand. "Then let's be scared together, but let's move forward." Months passed. Robert continued to show up occasionally, but no longer drunk or aggressive. Adriana set clear rules. He could see Renata, but at fixed times and in public places. Slowly, he accepted that the family he once had wouldn't return, but he could still be a present father in other ways. Ethan and Adriana made their relationship official. He introduced her to his friends and business partners. She, who initially felt self-conscious about dating such a successful man, learned that her value wasn't in his bank account, but in the person she was. Lucia, Ethan's mom, was thrilled when she found out. "I knew you two were meant for each other since that dinner," she said, hugging Adriana. "You brought my son back to life." Renata adapted to the new reality. She adored Ethan and started calling him Uncle Ethan. He picked her up from school, helped her with homework, and was always at school presentations. Adriana watched her daughter flourish with this stable male presence, something she never had with her own father. A year after that encounter at the bodega, Ethan invited Adriana to dinner at an elegant restaurant in the West Village of Manhattan. She was nervous, wearing a simple dress he had bought for her. During dinner, Ethan took her hand and said, "Adriana, a year ago, I followed you home without knowing it would change my life. You taught me what it means to be strong, what it means to love without expecting anything in return, and what it means to have a real family." He pulled a small box from his pocket. "I know our lives have been complicated. I know nothing has been perfect, but I don't want to spend another day without you or Renata by my side. Will you marry me?" Adriana covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't speak. She just nodded again and again. Ethan placed the ring on her finger and kissed her while the other restaurant patrons applauded. When they returned home, Renata was asleep on the sofa, watched by Lucia. Ethan gently woke her up. "Renata, there's something I want to ask you." The girl rubbed her sleepy eyes. "What, Uncle Ethan?" "I asked your mom to marry me today, and she said yes, but I wanted to know, do you accept me as part of your family?" Renata smiled, still half asleep. "You already are, Uncle Ethan. You're the best thing that's ever happened to us." Ethan hugged the girl, his heart full. Adriana watched the scene and realized that life had finally given her the second chance she never imagined she deserved. 6 months later, they got married in a simple ceremony at a small chapel in the Lower East Side. Only the most important people were there: Lucia, Renata, a few close friends, and even Robert, who arrived sober and asked to speak to Adriana. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry for everything," he said, eyes watery, "and I'm grateful you found someone who gives you what I never could." Adriana nodded. "Thank you, Robert, and I hope you find your peace too." He said goodbye and left, and Adriana felt that this chapter of her life was finally closed. Ethan and Adriana walked out of the chapel under a shower of flower petals. Renata tossed them enthusiastically, laughing, and when they got into the car that would take them on their small honeymoon to Napa Valley, Adriana looked at her husband and said, "I'll never forget the day you asked me if I was starving." Ethan smiled, "And I'll never forget that on that day, I found my reason for living." Sometimes a simple question can change everything. A gesture of kindness can open doors that seem closed forever. And starting over doesn't mean erasing the past, but choosing to write a new future with courage and love. If you enjoyed this story, comment below, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Rich Hearts Revealed to hear the next one.